process. At the moment, 96.6% of all voting stations in the country have declared results. The following provinces have already concluded: Mpumalanga, Northwest, Northern Cape, and the Western Cape. The province still with a bit work to do is Gauteng with 433 voting districts to conclude. This has been a mammoth task, a mammoth responsibility. However, it gives us pleasure as the Commission that we are about to conclude what the Constitution demands of us. We will work throughout the night still today to ensure that we do not go to bed, back to bed, without concluding the process. It is our expectation that by midnight, we would have concluded the 779 voting stations still to capture. On my part, really, I want to thank the media contingent that is here, that has journeyed with us during the course of the last few days. It has not always been an easy interaction at times, but one that was necessary in its robustness. And as we are about to conclude, my last word to you is that let's keep it up for South Africa. Thank you.
Allow me to call Commissioner Janet Love to continue on the progress update. Commissioner Love.
The Electoral Commission will receive a list of 1,020 voting stations from the Statistician General, which will form the sample for an independent technical assurance process that looks at the Section 24A voting. This list of the 1,020 voting stations will be made available to political parties as soon as it is received later on this evening. The Electoral Commission would like to express its gratitude to the Statistician General and his staff for the assistance which it has agreed rapidly and without hesitation to provide to us in the service of our country. The Electoral Commission further welcomes the findings of a number of international and domestic observer missions that have endorsed our elections as free and fair and broadly reflective of the will of the people. We would also like to thank the South African Police Services for the rapid way in which they have acted against voters allegedly who have alleged to have voted twice or have been attempting to vote more than once. To date, 22 persons have been arrested. The Electoral Commission would like to thank the political parties for the cooperative way in which they have worked with the Electoral Commission during our electoral process. The Commission is disappointed by the conduct of some parties in breaching of the code, which disrupted orderly operations within our results center. However, we have written to the leaders of all the political parties expressing our concern in this regard. Thank you very much.
As we continue on the progress update for today, allow me to call General Masemola, Deputy National Commissioner of the Police, to come and provide an update as well.
Thank you, Program Director, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. There is one matter that I would like to clarify, the matter around the arrest of people that allegedly voted twice. With regard to the case at Denhoza in KwaZulu-Natal, 17 people have voted at one venue, and allegedly they went to another venue, attempted to vote again. In the process of them wanting to vote, the presiding officer did ascertain from the voting station where they are registered whether they have not voted, and it was discovered that they had voted, all 17 of them, and she reported them to the police. They did run away, of course. 4 were arrested immediately, and the others were later arrested the second day. So all 17 of them have been arrested. However, they have not voted. They did start the process of getting to vote again, but they were all arrested. And we have one in a voting station in Ezingoleni in the south of KwaZulu-Natal. Also, the person went to the voting station, attempted to vote. In the process of assisting her to vote, it was discovered that this person had voted before, and police were called. The person was also arrested. In Sawoti, again south of Durban, there were one person that also attempted to vote again. And in the process, the case was reported to the police. This person was arrested and put behind bars. In north of KwaZulu-Natal, in Hluhluwe, there were 2 brothers that also want to vote again. Them, unfortunately, the mark was still visible, but they insisted that they want another mark on the other hand. And because of their insistence, eventually police were called. The 2 brothers have been arrested and charged for allegedly to commit a crime of wanting to vote again. And in Gauteng, there is one person that also attempted to vote again in Datlasdale, and police were called. This person was arrested, and also she's behind bars. In Mpumalanga, you'd be aware that there was on social media, a journalist that was reporting that a certain lady went to vote, I don't know how many times, you must be aware, and we have traced the person. Fortunately, we found the person, and investigation was done, and there were forms that were found where she filled section 24 forms, and both these people have been arrested as I'm speaking. So I just wanted to update on those specific cases. However, there is, of course, a number of other arrests that have been done nationally, not necessarily in terms of in terms of people that try to vote again. I must say those that we have arrested, to put the record straight, all were in an attempt to vote again, but they have not succeeded. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open the floor for questions.
Good evening, everybody. It's Natasha Puri here from SABC News. I think my question is directed to Judge Daya Pillay. I understand that 27 political parties had submitted their objections to you, and will you be meeting their demands of a rerun? Will there be an audit, like they say? Thank you.
Hello, Mahlatsi from EWN. Can we have a concession from the IEC that your safety measures are not enough to prevent people from voting more than once? And I ask this because in the past 3 days, the stories has changed, but now with the people arrested, there are people who voted, their ballots ended up in the ballot box, contaminating those ballots. Can we have that concession?
Good with the question.
Lisa Gatando from News 24. I just want clarity on one thing. I'm adding to my colleague's question regarding the disputes. Are we going to have a declaration tomorrow? Is this going to be the final day? Is tomorrow going to be the final day?
I'm Ranjini Munsami from TISO Black Star. I'd like to find out the methodology of the audit process. How did you choose the 1,020 voting stations to be audited, and how are they going through the process of verification? Thank you.
Marianne Merton from the Daily Maverick. A follow-up question directly to that. What will happen to the list of 1,020 voting stations? Have you done the audit there? Are you expecting political parties to get involved to do the audit? How long will the audit take? You calling it a verification process now, okay? And have you made any findings? Have you received findings from the Statistician General on this 1,020 voting stations? If you have received a finding, what is it, please? Thank you.
Can I only take the last question to allow the panel to respond?
Good evening. Sipho Kekana from SABC Digital News. There has been a lot of talk and reports around the credibility of these elections and the integrity of your processes. What is the IEC going to do differently in the future to make sure that we do not find ourselves in this position where there are a lot of questions being asked about your processes? And secondly, you have a voter's roll, you have a database where you have all the people that are registered to vote. So, but when it comes to elections, there seems to be a very conscious but questionable decision to go manual. And what is the rationale behind that? Because it also raises a lot of questions, because it would seem it is convenient to a certain agenda. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Let me allow the panel to respond.
Thank you for that question, and we just want to express our appreciation for the parties using legal processes to ventilate their grievances. On that question of the 27 parties who have lodged or initiated a legal process, our lawyers are busy with it, and in due course you will be informed of how that process unfolds. For the time being, it's sub judice, and I hope you will exercise some patience to enable us to look into it. Thank you.
With regard to the method of how the 1,020 voting stations were selected, and also then what process they will be subjected to going going forward. It is an independent process. What we were able to do was to provide the Statistician General with the full voters' roll, with the full system of the VDs, and they then applied their various methodologies to come up with what they regard as an appropriate sample, which is the 1,020 voting stations. So the basis for that, and why they selected one and not the other, is not something that we can answer. It's something that the Statistician General would be willing to, I'm sure, engage on now that we've had the opportunity to brief the political parties. There's a lot of terminology that is used, and I think it means different things to different people. Even in the course of questions, words like verification and audit and so on have been used. And for some people, audits, people like me, audits are very much to do with money, and clearly that's not the issue that we're looking at here. And I think it's for that reason that we really have tried to quite carefully craft what it is that the Statistician General has agreed to undertake and what he's been asked to undertake. And I just want to repeat, it's a sample study that is an assurance process for the purposes of the Commission. I hope that clarifies. But as I say, the further information about why and so on with regard to the process. There was then a question, well, has the Statistician General yet made some findings? No, that has not happened. What has happened is that the sample has been defined, and the information that is required by those working on that sample is being provided as requested and in as comprehensive a way as possible. The issue about the manual nature of the process that we use in relation to the voters' roll, I'm not completely sure that I understood all of the aspects of the question, but just to assure the person who asked the question, the process that we are using on this occasion is no different to the process that we have used all along. We have a voters' roll. Yes, it is captured electronically for the purposes of review, for the purposes of updating and so on. But when people go to a voting station, it has always been the case that the voters' roll has been printed, and then as people present themselves with their valid IDs, they are marked off manually onto that voters' roll. There are, as has been observed in previous occasions when we've engaged with yourselves, various other systems that are at play in other parts of the world. People have used the term electronic voting. We've never had that system in this country, and although we always keep abreast of what is available and what is possible, it's not something that we've introduced yet. Whether or not, because that was another question, we would do that or anything else differently in the future, I'm sure that we will, as we usually do after national election processes, reflect on a number of things, and that may well be one of them. But certainly part of that reflection will obviously have to involve people who are in the legislature. As you all know, we don't make the laws. We apply the laws in the most effective and best way that we can. With regard to the issue of I think the word that was used in the question was, would we make a concession? Just to about people voting twice. Again, I hope that I understood the question well. But as things stand at the moment, we do have indications from a variety of people that it is, and I'm using the term theoretically, it's theoretically possible for people to vote more than once. That is the allegation or the claim. We have understood why people are saying that in their view it's theoretically possible. And I suppose that goes to the question that was asked about would we do things differently and consider things a little bit together with the lawmakers, consider how adjustments can be made. But the reality is, as we are here now, and as you've heard from the South African police services who have done the investigation of all of those incidents that we have followed up where we've been provided with specifics. Although attempts have been made, those cases that have been concluded, the finding has been that there was not yet any evidence of successful double or triple or whatever voting. And I think that's all we can say. Whether or not it's possible, theoretically it's one thing, and I think that goes to systems. At this stage, we have no direct evidence that that has happened. We've asked, of course, and continue to ask, for very specific information to be provided, and we have committed, as we've done, to following up each and every specific case, both in terms of applying the rule of law, but also in terms, obviously, of an investigation. And should we receive any specific information, we'll follow up accordingly. Thanks.
Thank you. The questions that have been asked is whether we'll be declaring the results. I think we would like, just as a commission, to clarify something that appears to be a misunderstanding. According to our Act, the Chief Electoral Officer is responsible to conduct the election and deliver the outcomes. The commissioners independently and as individual independent commissioners will then apply themselves, take into context all the various objections and the objections that would have been received and complaints, and make up their minds as to what do they determine as the status of those particular results that are tabled by the CEO. We have not yet finalized that particular process, but we intend, without waste of any further time, to discharge our responsibility as we are required by our laws. And as matters stand, the plans continue on those bases. We will inform everybody if there are any plans that would be otherwise. But our plan is to make sure we discharge of our responsibility. At this stage, the CEO is busy discharging his responsibility, and we will then inform everybody as to the finality of the matter. But we don't intend to hold the country back from doing what we have traditionally done, declare the results as soon as we as commissioners have satisfied ourselves, taking into consideration what is prescribed in the Act with respect to objections and any complaints. Thank you.
Let me open a last round of questions as we begin to wrap up these elections. May I take colleagues, can we just move the mic? Let's not sit on one person. If you have had an opportunity to ask a question, allow others to do so.
Good evening. My name is Kaya Koko from Independent Media. I'd like to know whether or not the independent audit was canvassed in the PLCs. What was the overriding sentiment to the independent audit? And are all political parties partaking in those meetings? Thank you.
Good evening, Aldrin Sampier from ENCA. From these, the sample that you have of the polling stations that are being audited, are any of those polling stations part of the provinces that have finished the calculation so far? The other question relates to the indelible ink investigation. Have you been speaking to the company that has been providing the indelible ink? And the final question is, the question is relating to the investigation around people who have voted twice. It's strange that the Deputy Police Commissioner says that someone has been arrested for voting more than once. And then Commissioner Janet Love comes and says that we don't have evidence to that effect. Does that mean that when the prosecutors come to the IEC and ask for information, the IEC will tell the prosecutor that actually it's impossible to vote twice? Then why did you arrest this person?
My name is Hajra Marji from Power 987. We've not been here before, so in terms of the complaints and the objections and us not being privy to what happens in the party political liaison committee and what Commissioner Janet Love said about there being no evidence thus far, it seems as though there was no burden of proof on those complaining around allegations of double voting. So presumably you've done a sample test to protect the integrity of the IEC. Once that sample comes back after around 12 o'clock when the result is in, if there's no proof still of any evidence of double voting, what is the way forward in terms of the declaration, in terms of the objections, and in terms of the IEC possibly defending itself in court on the matter?
Hello. Hi. Hi. Bonga Tulane from EWN. Commissioner Love, you said something about disappointed at political parties' conduct for breaking the Electoral Act here. Who are you talking about? Is this the disgruntled smaller parties who have complaints, or is there something else you are referring to? Can you just get detail on that? Thank you.
Let me take the last question, please.
Amukhalambasa from Bloomberg News, the site. Thank you. With regards to the 27 political parties that were mentioned and the legal process thereof, just to get some clarification, how is that legal process going to affect the declaration of the final results? And since there is a legal process, can the IEC confidently declare that this was a free and fair before that legal process reaches its resolution?
Just Kate, just sorry, Matlasi again from EWN. We just need clarity, and it's a follow-up to Aldrin Sampier's question. So the people that are arrested, are you arresting them because they stood in a queue twice? Because that's all the scanners can establish? Or is what we've heard that they're actually arrested because they managed to vote twice? Because we've been here for 3 days asking the same question over and over again, and we're getting different versions of what the IEC understands to have happened. And because we are here for the first time as a country, I think South Africans need an answer and deserve an answer, so that when you eventually stand in front of them and declare the results, they know what actually happened. Because my second question with the audit is that unless you have evidence that the person took the ballot and put it in, you won't know. The only thing the scanner can tell you is that they were at one polling station and then they moved to another polling station. And all of the people that are arrested is because you had very alert presiding officers, or you had a journalist that actually tested the system and was able to prove that you can actually vote twice. So you wouldn't know in many of the 22,000 voting stations where it actually happened.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I allow the panel to please respond to questions? May I request people who've got microphones to get my instructions so that we manage this process? Panel, please.
The question was asked by Kaya with regard to the PLC, with regard to whether or not the sample study would be was discussed, and what the views and so on were. It has been discussed at a number of PLCs, and prior to us making contact with the Statistician General, there had been a very robust discussion, from what we understand, within the PLC, and a proposal was made. Initially, a proposal was made by one of the parties calling for a very comprehensive process, and then a proposal was made by another party to say that is something that they would not suggest, and instead a sample study. And then a discussion happened within the PLC about a sample study, and in that meeting, before we took up contact with the Statistician General, there was agreement. Subsequent to that engagement, outside also of the PLC, there have been various other opinions expressed by some of the parties who were in the PLC, and some have distanced themselves and asked for other things. So beyond telling you that it's been the subject of a number of discussions of the PLC, it's not very clear what else to say. I think you'd have to engage with different political parties to see why, if they did change their minds, why they changed their minds, and so on. With regard to the indelible ink, we have caused a study to be done, but I'm going to allow the CEO to deal with that question, because that is something that he has been dealing with. Okay, I'm putting together a few questions that have been asked in the earlier round as well as in this round. And maybe I wasn't clear before, but let me try and be more clear. In the Electoral Act, it is a crime to attempt to vote more than once. We have received information from various people and in various forms, political parties, about people who were identified in various ways for having done that, and therefore they were arrested. The arrest caused the South African Police Services to conduct an investigation, obviously with the assistance of the voting stations that were impacted in those cases where we have had specific information. And what you have heard from the South African Police Services is that in the cases they have done that investigation, even though people attempted, and for whatever reason, that's something that the court will deal with, but for whatever reason, the people attempted, but not any of those that they have come to the end of that part of the investigation was found to have actually voted twice. I hope that's clear. So nobody has been found to have voted twice, but the mere attempt to have done so, whether you succeeded in doing so or you didn't succeed in doing so, just the attempt to do it is something that is punishable. He is quite willing to be asked, and he will speak again. He will speak again, so we don't have to have a dialogue, but I'm just answering the question that was raised with me as to what did I mean. You will hear again in terms of the report. It may be that people needed more clarity, but I just want to emphasize again, if you attempt to defraud in the manner that I've just mentioned, it is a crime. You may have other reasons, whatever they are, that will be the business of the court. I hope that one is clear. Thank you.
I'm going to call General Masemola to come and repeat his report.
Thanks, Chairperson. With regard to the case I mentioned at Mpumalanga, what I said is that the person claimed, I'm sure you have seen it on social media, the person claimed to have voted twice. We followed up, we arrested both the one that said he sent another one to vote. So that claim is under investigation. That's what I said. The other 17 and I think 20, I think I explained myself very well. There are those, I'm sure, that are on social media still claiming to have voted more than once. We are still looking for them. We plead with you, assist us in identifying them so that we can have more work with them. Thank you very much.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we're bringing this press briefing to an end. We still have a whole night to ensure that we complete counting of votes and we assist our officials to complete the process. Thank you very much.